Hello everyone, I'm Lizzie and welcome to my very first episode of That's So Lizzie, the radio show. A nostalgic, heartfelt space for all of us who still remember those Disney Channel wand IDs, fluffy scarves, and begging our parents for a Hilary Duff CD. This episode is called This Is So the Beginning because, well, it is. Today, I'm sharing how this whole thing started, from TikTok to sharing my Disney collection to meeting Hilary Duff and why Lizzie McGuire was basically my emotional roadmap growing up. So whether you're listening during your commute, winding down before bed, or maybe I'm just background noise, thank you so much for being here. Let's start at the beginning. My name actually comes from my middle name. My middle name is Lisette. I was like, oh, Lizzie is short for Lisette, so why not? That's how I came up with my name. So I am That's So Lizzie. Lizzie and That's So is just a way for me to pay homage to my two favorite Disney Channel shows of all time. That's a Raven and Lizzie McGuire. And about a year ago, I started a TikTok account that focuses on what I would call peak early 2000s Disney Channel. My content is built around my personal collection, which literally has been with me since childhood. I'm talking DVDs, CDs, posters, plushes, VHS tapes, even my old CRT TV. The coolest part about my collection is that most of it is really from my childhood, all thanks to my parents who are so amazing and saved everything. They preserved my childhood like a little time capsule, and honestly, I'm forever grateful for that. But what really pushed me to share it all was a Disney Channel themed event at Disneyland. It was the first and so far the only, hopefully it will come back soon. And I'm not kidding when I say it was my favorite Disneyland memory. I've been going to Disneyland since I was literally a newborn. And to say that Disney Channel night is truly one of my favorite times visiting the park really says a lot, because I really have been there several hundred times. What made it special was just being surrounded by people that obviously we all shared the same love for peak Disney Channel. I'm talking walking down Main Street and we're all singing to the top of our lungs Hannah Montana, Allie and AJ, the theme song of Phineas and Ferb. And it was just like experiencing Radio Disney in person, but also seeing people's costumes. People really went all out, and it was just so incredible. After that, my parents pull out all of the stuff they have been saving, and suddenly I was holding pieces of myself I hadn't seen in years. That sparked it all. I started posting, sharing, and eventually going live on TikTok. I'll play music that gave off those Radio Disney vibes, and suddenly people were finding me. People who loved it just as much as I did. And that's what brought me here. I wanted to create a space where people can listen and we can talk about all of our favorite memories, talk about why these shows, the movies, the music, even the fashion, how that left such a huge impact in all of our lives. I also wanted to make a space for those who can't join my late night live streams. Sorry, I am a certified night owl. So I just feel like this can be an extra space where you can tune in anytime you want, and we can talk about more Disney Channel and more nostalgic things here. Let's talk about what Disney Channel and early 2000s, aka Y2K culture actually meant to us. For a whole generation of us, it wasn't just TV. It was our blueprint, our education and friendship, creativity, fashion, style, and maybe most of all, self-expression. It shaped the music we listened to, the way we dressed, the jokes we made, and the confidence that we built. I realized that more clearly when I started college, and I found myself quoting That's So Raven constantly. I even had a YouTube channel back then called Oh Snaps. The jokes, the puns that I would tell my friends, it was really all Raven. She really trained my comedic brain. Like, she is the reason I have somewhat of a sense of humor. What's funny is that I was rewatching Lizzie McGuire last year with my husband, and he looked at me and he said, you know what? Like, you have Lizzie's attitude. And I just laughed and I said, you know what? You're right. Lizzie taught me how to have attitude, and I love that. So now I like to say that I got my humor from Raven and my attitude from Lizzie. But that's the thing. These characters didn't just entertain us, they truly became part of us. Lizzie, Raven, Hannah, they all made it normal to be awkward, cringy, funny, dramatic, and totally unsure of yourself. But they made it okay. Fashion. Let's talk about fashion because wow. The choker necklaces, glitter everything, flare jeans. It was chaos, but we were happy. It was colorful and sometimes it didn't make sense, but at the same time, it was so bad that it was good. Because the fits were a whole aesthetic and they made it fun to be weird. When I think of fashion, I for sure think of Raven and Lizzie. They truly represent, in my eyes, the true early 2000s fashion. Now let's talk about music, specifically Radio Disney. Those songs were the soundtrack of our lives. Hilary Duff, Jesse McCartney, Cheetah Girls, Ally and AJ. It was basically the soundtrack of our lives. Radio Disney was there for any moment of my life, especially when I was like not watching Disney Channel, probably listening to it on my way to school, for sure after school. Disney Channel wasn't just trying to be cool, it was just also trying to have a space of comfort and joy, and I think that's why we're still drawn to it. It reminds us of a time when we could be loud and fully ourselves. And now that leads me to Lizzie McGuire. That show was truly everything. To me, it was the blueprint of how to navigate my teenage years. I am so grateful to say that Hilary Duff was my first concert. This is 2003. I'm about 8 years old, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. And it was everything from just seeing Hilary perform in person, even though it was my very first concert, but I was seeing someone so important to me, especially at the time. Hilary was just such a big sister, a true idol in my life. And seeing Hilary in concert will forever just be such a core memory for me. And then the following year in 2004, I had the privilege of meeting her at a local meet and greet at a mall. And that day was just even more special because she was kind and warm and truly, like I said, just like a big sister. And honestly, that's exactly how Lizzie McGuire felt to me, like a friend who understood you when no one else did. I wasn't even a tween yet when the show started. I was just a kid watching tweens, studying them, trying to figure out what growing up was going to feel like. Lizzie made it look messy. She made it look also very dramatic and emotional, but she also made it look fun. And my favorite part about Lizzie McGuire is that she went through so many awkward situations, and that really made me feel seen because even to this day, I feel like I'm a very awkward person. I feel like I'm always running into awkward situations to the point where if something awkward happens to me or something awkward happens to my sister, we always tell each other, oh, I had a Lizzie McGuire moment. And you know, what made that show so brilliant was the animated version of Lizzie. And that little cartoon version of her inner voice was just genius. It gave us permission to have that voice in our head that no one knows. And it was also our way to be able to, we can freak out, we can overthink, we can have second guesses. And instead of hiding it, Lizzie put it out there through this animated version of her. Like, for example, if she wasn't freaking out on the outside, she was definitely freaking out in the inside. It was just such a genius way to visually depict how someone's inner thoughts are not reflecting what they're showing. And I just thought that was just overall kind of important. Lizzie failed constantly. She made bad decisions. But what was most important about her character is that she truly cared a lot about her friends, about her family. And that's what really made her real. Lizzie wasn't the popular kid. She wasn't considered, in the show, at least she wasn't considered the prettiest. But she was always just trying to just be true to herself. And that's truly what mattered. But let's not forget the friendships. Gordo, Miranda, they were messy and complicated, like real friendships are. They fought, they supported each other, they got jealous. And when Miranda disappeared from the show, we felt that. As a kid, I was very confused and sad about it. So obviously that's probably the biggest criticism I have of the show. Her family too. They weren't perfect. Her mom was overbearing, sometimes pushy. Her dad could be clueless at times. And well, Matt was just Matt, he was just your typical little brother. Honestly, for me, aside from Lizzie, of course, I think Matt's probably my second favorite character off of Lizzie McGuire. But her family were always there for her, and they showed up for her. And that dynamic was comforting in a way that you don't always realize as a kid. And, Lizzie McGuire, the show just had so many iconic moments, but it also talked about topics that weren't so easy to talk about. And now we have to talk about the bra episode, Between a Rock and a Bra Place. It sounds silly, but when you're 8 years old, this episode honestly was so impactful. To this day, as a 31-year-old, that is probably one of the most memorable episodes. Every so often, my sister and I talk about that episode, and we talk about how iconic and important that episode was, especially at the time in the early 2000s. Watching that episode was truly life-changing, even for me as an 8-year-old at the time. What I really, really appreciate about the episode is that it just wasn't like a joke. It made it feel real and vulnerable and supportive. That iconic moment where Lizzie just kind of breaks down and tells her mom, I just want a bra. Even her mom kind of gets emotional because she not only realizes that her daughter's growing up, but she also gets emotional because she's like, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay that you want a bra. That's a normal thing. And I think that's the biggest message that I got, especially as a kid. You're going to go through that, and you're not weird, and it's totally okay, and it's normal. And then there's the Lizzie McGuire movie. The whole storyline, going to Rome, being mistaken for a pop star, performing in front of thousands. It was the dream. It was our dream. It sure was my dream, especially as a kid. For me personally, I think a lot of you can relate to the dream of wanting to be famous and wanting to be a pop star and even wanting to be a Disney Channel star. That for sure was my personal dream. And so the Lizzie McGuire movie is exactly how I would envision that to happen. And so I think that's why it was just such a perfect movie. And of course, the moment when she sings This Is What Dreams Are Made Of, and truly the best song ever. And it still gives me chills because, man, what an epic scene in cinematic history. I mean, just the whole movie stuck with me, and it still does. I remember watching that movie for the first time in theaters with my mom and my sister. I don't know if it was through school or a radio giveaway. I need to ask my mom, but all I remember is that we got special tickets to watch the Lizzie McGuire movie 2 days early. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. I remember sitting in the theater and just watching the movie. Wow, to think that was already 21 years ago. That's insane. But I remember that day like yesterday, and the soundtrack, the fashion, everything about that movie was just so perfect. That movie is truly iconic, comforting, it's fun, and the soundtrack is one of the best soundtracks in Disney music history. So sitting here now, a lot older now, but being surrounded by my childhood things, surrounded by things that I hadn't seen in over 15 years, has just been a bit of a surreal, bittersweet moment. And I created this nostalgic space in my house. It really does feel like a bit of a time capsule in here. And at first I thought it was going to be a bit odd for me. It's just seeing my childhood things, seeing them being displayed again, kind of the way I used to display it as a kid. It's just been a surreal but bittersweet experience. I learned to really embrace this part of my childhood because I just have grown to realize that all these things that I'm surrounded by, specifically the early 2000s Disney Channel and peak Disney Channel era, is just a huge part of my life. You know, I pretty much watched Disney Channel constantly for over 10 years as a child, and that really just left a huge impact on my life. And thanks to the special event at Disneyland, and of course my parents keeping as much as they can from my childhood, just bringing those two things together really helped reconnect part of me that I almost forgot, like how much this era of Disney Channel really left on my life. And yeah, so sitting here, it's just been surreal, but I've just been so grateful that I have been able to build a very, very small community where we can just embrace the love that we have on these shows, these movies, the music. And I love that. That just really makes me happy. And I just want to say that thank you so much for being here, for sharing the nostalgia with me. These shows, the characters, the songs, they didn't just entertain us, they truly did raise us. And that's why I made this podcast show. Not only just to talk about Disney Channel and the Y2K fashion, although trust me, we will pretty much all the time, but really to create a space where we all can feel that magic again. And I've got so much coming up. I got more deep dives. So until next time, I'm Lizzie, and this is That's So Lizzie, the radio show.